Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call to order the Oxnard City Council for March the 4th, 2024. And Madam Clerk, roll call and posting of the agenda.
Councilmember Madrigal.
Here.
Councilmember Perrella.
Here.
Councilmember Turan.
Here.
Councilmember Valenzuela.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Here.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on February 21st, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item B is public comments and closed session items. Any public speakers, either virtually or in person?
We do not have any public speakers in person or virtually for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. So then we go item C, Mr. City Attorney, your item.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will recess to a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8 to give instructions to its real property negotiators regarding property located at 731 South A Street, 715 South A Street, 720 South B Street, and those are all properties within the Heritage Square complex. Agency's negotiators are Ashley Golden, Assistant City Manager, Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. The negotiating party is Al Barkley, Heritage Square Property Owners Association. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment. And the council will also be considering under that same government code section property located at 3941 to 3951 Saviors Road. And the agency's negotiator is Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. The negotiating party is CCC Surfview LLC. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor. Please let the record show that Councilmember Basua has joined the meeting at 4:33 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to a closed session. We'll be back for an appointed item at 5:30. Closed session. Thank you. Okay, we're back from closed session, and Mr. City Attorney, do we have any announcements out of closed session?
There are no actions to report other than the legislative body providing direction to the city's negotiators.
Thank you, sir. And our next item is it's appointment item with subjects Cayugas Water Resource Implementation Strategy, WRIST process, and we have Sherry, you want to introduce our guest?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of the public. As you know, Oxnard imports approximately 40% of our current water portfolio from the State Water Project through the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. That entity brings that water from Met to Oxnard. The entity, that brings that water from Met to Oxnard is the Cayugas Municipal Water District. So that's obviously a very critical partnership for Oxnard's future. As of January 24th, Christine McCaffrey is the new general manager at Cayugas, and she's come to speak with us this evening. Her focus is in implementing collaborative and ambitious approaches to improving water supply reliability in Ventura County. Ms. McCaffrey has more than 25 years of experience in the water industry, and prior to her current role, she was the manager of engineering at Cayugas and oversaw numerous phases of construction of the Salinity Management Pipeline, or the SMP. She has BS degrees in environmental engineering and planning from MIT and a master's in construction management from the University of Washington, and she is a licensed civil engineer and holds a grade 3 water treatment plant operator certification. Please welcome Ms. McCaffrey.
Thank you, Christina. Christina, by the way, McCaffrey, it's okay if we call you Christina?
Or Christine.
Christine, go ahead then. Thank you, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. Thank you, Sherry, for that lovely introduction. As Sherry mentioned, I have only been the general manager at Cayugas for a little over a month now, but I'm excited that you are the very first City Council I am speaking to. I'd also like just to introduce briefly Ian Pritchard, who's our deputy general manager, and then we also have Director McMillan, who is one of the Cayugas board members who represents a portion of Oxnard on our board.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and then there's a presentation.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, look at that. Okay, so just kind of gives you some background about Cayugas. I know many of you are familiar with Cayugas already, but just in case, we, as Sherry indicated, are the imported water wholesaler for Ventura County. We serve 19 different water agencies, and that's about 640,000 people. It's actually about 75% of Ventura County's residents get all or some of their water from us. We were formed in 1953. Prior to that, everyone was working off of groundwater around here, and there were constraints to that in terms of both quantity and quality, especially more in the East County. And we joined the Met Water District in 1960. As you can see on this map, the yellow portions are the Cayugas service area. So it includes Simi, T.O., Moore Park, Camarillo, Oxnard, Port Hueneme, and the bases, as well as some of the unincorporated areas that are in between. We are an independent special district governed by a 5-member elected board. As I indicated, Director McMillan is one of those board members. We've got a budget of about $157 million and about 80 employees. And one of the things we're super proud of is that our average tenure is 14 years. Personally, I've been at Cayugas for 20 years in June. And I'm sometimes I feel like a short timer because there's all these people who've been there for 35 years or more. Our primary water supply, as Sherry mentioned, is it's all from Metropolitan, but most of it is from the State Water Project. We have a single tunnel that parallels the railroad tunnel through the mountains to Chatsworth. We also have 2 locations where we store imported water so that we can be prepared for outages. That is our Las Posas Aquifer Storage and Recovery well field, which is out in the Grimes Canyon area near Moore Park, as well as our Lake Bard and the Lake Bard Water Filtration Plant, which is located at our headquarters in Thousand Oaks. We also have an interconnection with Crestview Mutual Water Company, who's one of our retailers. And we're in process of construction on a much larger interconnection with our neighbors, Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, that serves Westlake, Calabasas area, and will be able to move water to each other when that's completed, which is expected to be later this year. Here's a map that kind of generally shows who our purveyors are. We generally operate, all of our water flows from east to west. So we have an upper zone where the water is at a higher pressure, that's Thousand Oaks, Oak Park, Simi. A lower zone, Oxnard, Camarillo. As you can see, our upper zone purveyors, they rely on us quite a bit more. There's fewer groundwater resources in those areas, whereas Oxnard, Sherry cited 40%. It does vary from year to year. When we looked at the numbers, it seemed to vary from about 32 to 40 something, depending on the year. This is just kind of a schematic of our distribution system. And once again, it pretty much flows from east to west. Oxnard actually picks up the water at that Springville tank you see at the far left-hand side. It's actually an 18 million gallon 2-compartment tank that's in the Spanish Hills part of Camarillo. And from that point on, the pipeline is owned by Oxnard, and Oxnard conveys that water to Port Hueneme. Just a brief mention on Metropolitan. They are the nation's largest wholesale water provider, serving 19 million people, basically from here down to the Mexican border. There's 26 member agencies in 6 counties, of which we are one, and it supports a $1 trillion regional economy. Their water comes from the Northern Sierra, the State Water Project, and the Colorado River. They also invest in local projects and conservation. I'll talk a little bit more about that here momentarily. So I did want to include a little bit of information about some of the water use efficiency partnerships that Oxnard and Calleguas have engaged in. There's 3 programs I'm going to mention here. One is this member agency administered program, the turf replacement rebates, and then water saving device rebates. The member agency administered program is basically a program that where Metropolitan provides funding, and the member agencies, Calleguas, and our retailers have some flexibility in how to use that money to best meet our water use efficiency needs. In the last 4-ish years, it's been $171,000 for Oxnard projects specifically, including some focus on fixing leaks, drip irrigation workshops, and in particular, toilet leak detection sensors for a number of multi-family housing developments. And what that does is when there's a leak, the system notifies someone so that they can go investigate, and that water waste is limited. Also, turf replacement rebates. This is, when we say turf, we're talking about grass, about lawns, particularly ones that are not used by anyone. If the only person who walks on it is the person who mows it, then perhaps you're better served by having something native and less water intensive. Since 2014, there's been 332 turf replacement rebates issued in the city. It's over $1 million in metropolitan funding. This is just for Oxnard, and an additional $260,000 from Calleguas. Also, we offer, and Metropolitan offers, water saving device rebates. This has been basically about $500,000 over since 2009. Includes things like clothes washers, high efficiency toilets, low flow shower heads, rain barrels. We usually have a couple of rain barrel distribution events that we offer twice a year. Rotating sprinkler nozzles, weather-based irrigation controllers, and the like. We also do a fair amount of work promoting water use efficiency. You may have seen that top left, The Landscape is Change, is a recent program that we've undertaken. You might have seen those ads on the sides of the Gold Coast Transit buses. There were also some Spotify ads and other newspaper ads to try to get people to go to the website and look at the opportunities there are for engaging in rebates, and particularly this Garden Landscapes for Ventura County, really looking at California-friendly native plants that are much less water using, and yet they're beautiful and vibrant and provide habitat for butterflies and all of that. So a lot of great resources can be found at those locations. So with that kind of background, offered. What I wanted to focus on tonight is what Cayugas is doing to improve water supply resilience so that none of us have to go through what we went through over the last couple of years in terms of water supply restrictions. Our board determined that Cayugas has historically imported water from Metropolitan. That's been our role. But our board has undertaken this new model of resilience where Cayugas is a much more active participant in regional partnerships and collaboration to improve water supply reliability. And Oxnard is one of those potential key partners. And those programs could involve supply, storage, other programs. We're kind of open to everything and anything that helps improve our local water supply resilience so that we are less dependent and less at risk from shortages in the future. So the Water Resources Implementation Strategy, we call it the WRIST, builds on the history of extensive regional collaboration because this Ventura County does have a strong history of that, of working together and cultivating ambitious water supply and resilience projects like, we operate the salinity management pipeline. There are 3 different groundwater desalters that discharge into that pipeline. And for a period of time, Oxnard was discharging the product water from its AWPF, and we were conveying that water kind of backwards through the SMP to nearby agricultural lands while the city was working on building their permanent recycled water infrastructure. So there's a lot of history in this regard that we can really build upon and take it to the next level. The goal is to address long-term water supply reliability and resiliency along with outages. As I mentioned, we have a single tunnel that connects us to Met, so that's a vulnerable point. But we also are dealing with climate change in the primary water supply sources and other risks associated with that. So we're working on evaluating portfolios of projects with a regional focus, finding projects that can benefit of mutual benefit, that can benefit us, that can benefit our partners, whether that's Oxnard, the city of Thousand Oaks, or another entity that is one of our customers or maybe not. We're also looking at opportunities to work with some of the other regional water agencies that aren't directly served by KES to find these opportunities for mutual benefit. So where we are now is on phase 1, which is the water resource portfolio development and regional consensus building. The idea is then to take that into the next phase, which would be implementation. And then once we're in implementation, deliver the program and adaptively manage it moving forward, knowing that the future will be somewhat different than we expect it to be, and we need to be prepared to pivot. So we've had a series so far, well, a series of 2, there will be more, of partner workshops. This is some photos from the very first one, which was held, I believe, last summer. And we had about 40 representatives from all over Ventura County water agencies, including Oxnard, but also beyond. We had representatives from Santa Clarita Valley Water, Las Virgenes, who's our neighbor on the east side. I had never seen this many water people in Ventura County in one place at one time, and particularly with that level of enthusiasm to really engage in how can we best solve the problems that we're all facing, because we all have these challenges. And if we work together, we can deliver more cost-effective solutions and more successful solutions. And we had a second workshop then a couple months ago, really focusing on risks and uncertainties, focusing on the types of projects that fit into different themed portfolios, such as, obviously you're going to look at a portfolio that's lowest cost, but you're also going to want to look at what if you focus on maximizing local supplies? What if you focus on maximizing the benefit of imported water through storage projects? And then we're evaluating those and can kind of mix and match those projects. So where we are in the process now, our consultant team has evaluated the existing systems, incorporated those projects, developed those initial portfolios, and we've held those 2 partner workshops. Right now, they're in the process of doing some technical analysis and portfolio evaluation process and refinement. And to that end, we actually have a meeting tomorrow with some key staff from Oxnard, including Sherry and Michael Wolf and some other water staff, to talk about some of the potential opportunities here in Oxnard, both in terms, you have some amazing assets from a water supply standpoint. You have an AWPF that has available capacity that could be tapped. You have some a groundwater basin, but you've also got some challenges in that the groundwater basin's in an adjudication. And also, Oxnard's at the lowest part of our system, so we don't have the ability, water generated in Oxnard, we can't move back, and at least not with the current infrastructure. So those are some challenges. But we're going to talk about how we can put these pieces together in a way that can benefit Oxnard, that can benefit Callegas.
Hold on, Christine.
Next question.
Yes.
Dive a little deeper into Oxnard's the lowest point in the system and what the
Sure.
ramifications are to the council members here and the residents of the city.
Yeah, let me go
Please.
back to the map because I think that's the best way to represent it. So as you can, I talked a little bit about how the water comes in on the east side, east portal, is what we call it, goes through a tunnel, goes through SEMI. So our water flows almost exclusively by gravity from that point. We actually generate hydro electric power in pipe at 5 different locations in our system
Is
because
that from Springville?
Springville is one of them.
Yeah, okay.
We have a hydro at Springville, but we also have 4 others. Springville's one of the larger ones.
The larger ones, okay.
So the water largely flows from east to west. And as you go from east to west, the pressure gets lower, you're reducing the pressure, and also the pipes are getting smaller. So we don't have the ability to move water with our current infrastructure from west to east. That's not how the system was built. Now, we've looked at how could you accomplish that and what would it take, but what it does mean, what's good for Oxnard is it means that any water we develop anywhere in our system, any projects can benefit Oxnard because we can always get that water to you.
But can I add a little bit? So we can always trade water too, right?
I'm sorry? What
We
was-
can trade water also.
Yes, and you can, and I think the things that we're talking about in the RIST absolutely involve trading water.
That's right.
I always describe it as let's follow the benefit, not the molecule.
Exactly right.
So there are absolutely opportunities for that. But from a physical standpoint, if water is generated in Oxnard, I can't get it into Springville Tank, and I can't get water in Springville Tank anywhere further up in my system.
So my apologies, Councilmember, go ahead. I just want to ask a question.
With respect to getting more water in the pipeline would benefit Oxnard, provided you have a source of water. If your water supplies from whoever is supplying you water, I think you said it was Metropolitan, is not able to supply you, there could be a possibility of having a problem getting it to Oxnard.
The problem isn't necessary, we shouldn't have problems moving the water if the water is there to move.
So you need enough water to build ahead to push it to the other end. If you don't,
Well, it's more that you just need enough supply total.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Christine.
No problem. Let me get back to where I was here. I was kind of towards the end, so. So as I was saying, yes, we're meeting with Oxnard staff tomorrow with Sherry and Michael and other key staff to talk about the opportunities that exist here and how we can work together in a way for mutual benefit to potentially advance some projects in a partnership type situation. And then we will have another partner workshop in the next couple of months and develop that preliminary implementation framework that I was talking about. And so that is kind of the brief overview of Callegas and the RIST. And if there's time, I can take questions.
Yeah, Christine, thank you so much for the explanation, the presentation. I have a quick question. You know, Oxnard and the last drought we had, all our businesses and residents were hit really, really hard with the drought. What is Callegas doing for the future droughts? We're going to get another drought whether we like it or not. We're going to get one. And also, with that question, how can you work to help Met give us the water that we need, and how can we work together with Met? Because we have ASR wells that we're looking for and so forth. So I know the resiliency program you talked about is going to help us, but we were hit really, really hard with mandates or restricting water and commercial and so forth. And how can we prevent it in the future? You know, which I think is extremely important for all of us.
It is incredibly important, and it's our board's top priority and my top priority to make sure that none of us ever go through again what we went through in the last couple of years. And we're taking a two-pronged approach with that. One is the RIST. The RIST is focused on us doing for ourselves in conjunction with partners, improving that water supply reliability to reduce the dependence on Met. And in the meantime, we are also working through the processes of Met to ensure that they deliver projects that improve supply equity, which was the issue during the last drought. It wasn't, the entire Met service area was not affected in the same way. We are within this what they call the state water project dependent area. And so us and Las Virgenes and Los Angeles and 3 agencies further inland were all affected to a greater degree than other Met partners. And they've already implemented projects on what's called the east dependent, we're the west dependent area. The east dependent area, they've already are in progress constructing projects that enhance that infrastructure so that they can get Colorado River water to those agencies, which then frees up more water for us on the state water project.
Because if we could get some funding from Met or for our ASR wells, so we can actually bank that water that eventually is going to help us, with the needs over in Simi Valley and Moore Park and so forth. So I think some funding for ASRs would be great.
And we're certainly going to talk about the opportunities for that. One of Met's great programs is the Local Resources Program, where they have historically funded portions of local projects that reduce demands on Met. Those existing desalters that Camarosa and Camarillo operate are both benefiting from that program. And the ASR project may be a good candidate for that, or there may be better fits in terms of funding sources. But we're going to pursue all that and discuss all that with your staff.
Thank you, Christine. Council members, Councilmember Perallo.
Number one, thank you very much for making the presentation, and your staff and the board member. Thank you for coming to the city of Oxnard. Some of the questions may be perceived as a little bit sharp, but we worked with all of the water agencies, Callegas included, during the drought. There would be weekly, sometimes monthly, sometimes weekly meetings. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And in the hotter part of the county, we're very fortunate to live on the coast and have the influence of the moisture in the air. The political part of this issue, no matter where you live in the county, there isn't one of the 7 members up here that didn't get calls from people about, you got the restrictions, you have this, you got that. And I'll never forget, I had more than one person talk to me about they can't water the trees grandpa and grandma planted, and because I can't water them, what are you doing? And I want to make sure that everybody, the board member who's watching, and I hope listening, nodding her head, thank you very much. That is the kind of stuff that when we start asking about water, we'll work and do whatever you want, but we're accountable to our residents and the people that have ratepayers. Some of the suggestions that I've heard from our staff in working with you sound fantastic. I want you to know we're a partner. And if anybody is hurting you in some other agency, a bigger one, we want to know because we want to help you. We don't want to get hurt any more than you do or the rest of the cities that you cover. And I appreciate the map because a lot of people think you supply Ventura County. You don't. You supply this and the eastern part. And the eastern part is much more in your debt for having the water. And we understand that on this side, we have the ability to pump water and to help out the people on the eastern part of the county and help you and your board. We'll do whatever we can. And I think our history shows that we have. Thank you very much for coming, and I appreciate the presentation. Looking forward to working with you much more. And again, I hope that you share the message with all the cities that you provide, because I'm not the only one that's gotten phone calls in this city or other cities about what I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. I know you mentioned a little bit about your discussions with Met and the working interaction there. And is there anything that we can do to assist in a relationship between you and Met? Because you're really our lifeline to Met. We don't have the direct connection. So if there's anything we can do, and I don't know if there's anything Met could look at that might make a difference in water distribution during particular times of the year when it's real crucial to make sure it flows the right way. We certainly would love to be a partner in that if there's anything we can do to assist you and Callegas and really benefit all of us.
Absolutely. And we already do and will continue to work very closely with your staff to take advantage of the opportunities that are available to us and the partnership opportunities.
One more question. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
One more question. I'm sorry. I appreciated the map showing the Springville, and it's in Spanish Hills and Camarillo, and the map doesn't show but the pipeline that comes down to Oxnard. I believe it's a 42-inch pipeline.
That sounds right.
Is that a Callegas pipeline, or is that a City of Oxnard pipeline?
It's a City of Oxnard pipeline.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, thank you to the board members. Thank Christina for an excellent presentation. Water is very important. What is my saying? Water is for what? And Listen to this. Go ahead.
Is it Mark Twain? I think it's Mark Twain that said, "Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting."
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to the board members
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. No, we don't have any speakers on this item, right, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you so much. Our next item is the opening ceremonies, and we have, please help us with the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our next item is, thank you so much for coming over. Our next item is a ceremonial item. This is a presentation, a proclamation designating March 2024 as Women's History Month, and we do have a young lady by the name of Susan Roth. Susan, coming up.
It is.
Susan is the president of the League of Women Voters. Welcome, Susan. I have a proclamation I'd like to read, and then you can share a couple of words. The proclamation, Women's History Month, March 2024. Whereas women of every background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation, and in countless and recorded and unrecorded ways. Where women have played and continue to play a crucial or critical role in the economic, culture, and social life of our nation. And whereas women have played a unique role throughout our history by providing the majority of volunteer labor forces, whereas women were particularly important in the establishment of our early charitable and cultural institutions, and where women have served our country courageously in the military, and also women have been leaders of not only securing our rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially peace movements, which create a more fair and just society for all. Whereas despite these contributions, the role of women in history have been consistently overlooked and undervalued in literature, teaching, and study of history. Now therefore, I, John C. Zaragoza, Mayor of the City of Oxnard, do hereby proclaim March 2024 Women's History March in the City of Oxnard and encourage all residents to learn more about the contributions made in our community and our nation by women who have been left enduring imprints in our history. And this is signed by the mayor today. Susan, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you. Put your hands together for Susan.
Yes, would you please? Do you want me to?
Yeah, right. You're on.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Put it closer. You want me to hold it?
Yes, please. That would be good.
Let me hold this.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters is deeply honored to be here today to accept this proclamation on behalf of Women's History Month. The formation of the League of Voters had its roots in the suffrage movement. The struggle for suffrage, that's the right to vote, was a long and bitter fight requiring 72 years of effort. Women who had never had public lives were emboldened to speak out, to march in the streets, and to protest in public. The lessons of the women's suffrage movement deeply influenced later American social justice and advocacy movements. Carrie Chapman Catt founded the League of Women Voters on February 14, 1920, 6 months before the ratification of the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote, with the goal of educating a new group of voters, women. Her vision of the League was that it be nonpartisan and non-sectarian in nature and work towards securing the enfranchisement of women in every state, to removing the remaining legal discrimination against women and make our democracy safe. In fact, the motto of the League today is empowering voters, defending democracy, and the League continues to this day to be nonpartisan, working to educate all of the electorate, not just women, on issues and candidates, and encouraging informed and active participation in government. Since its inception, the League has helped millions of women and men become informed participants. Throughout our history, League members have led grassroots movements for universal voter registration, campaign integrity, civil rights, clean air and water, safe and affordable housing, and childcare. The League continues to be involved in advocating for redistricting reform to eliminate partisan and racial gerrymandering, protecting voting rights, countering misinformation and disinformation, and increasing voter participation. Local leagues conduct candidate forums so that voters can hear directly from candidates to better inform their choice when they cast their vote. Local leagues also inform the voter about ballot measures and factual information. The Ventura County League is actively involved in conducting voter registration for students at high schools throughout the Ventura County and educating voters with the intent of creating a stronger, more representative democracy. Excuse me. Committees established by the Ventura County League of Women Voters include the Voter Services Committee, Voter Registration Committee, the DEI Racial and Social Justice Committee, and the Climate Change Committee. The League continues to provide scholarships to students enrolled in colleges across Ventura County in order to support the next generation of voters. So thank you for honoring the League of Women Voters with this proclamation in recognition of Women's History Month. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Put your hands together for the League. Thank you. Do you have, oh, we got the young ladies with me. We could have brought them up here.
Please, we have 4 people.
Come on over real quick, so we at least take a photo and we can see you on television.
Yeah, I would like them to.
Coming up, and you can introduce yourself. By the way, I participated in many forums, and Mr. Marin has done a really good job for you folks. He's done a really, really good job. We'll start off with a young lady here, which I know. Introduce yourself. How are you? Go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Carmen Hurd. I'm from Po'oinimi, and I've been with the League for 20, 30 years.
Okay, and we'll pass it on to Kathy.
Hello, I'm Kathy Morgan. I'm the co-chair of Voter Services.
Okay, excuse me.
My name is Carol Lindberg. I live in Ventura and. Oh, okay.
Right here, Mia. Right here. No, go ahead.
Oh, well, and I've been a member of the League for several years, and I thank you for this proclamation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Kathy Trevino, and I am involved with the high school voter registration, where we go to high schools and register the kids from 16, so they're ready when they're 18 and they can vote.
And by the way, my understanding now is that they can start registering at 17 and a half. Is that correct?
16.
Oh, 16 now.
Yes. We register them at 16, and then when they turn 18, they get a nice little card in the mail that says, "Congratulations, you can now vote."
Thank you so much. It's really an honor. Again, as I mentioned before, I've been in quite a few of the forums that you've had, and Mr. Marin has done a really, really, really good job for you folks. And thank you for your service. Young ladies, thank you so much. And I'm sure that my granddaughters are watching too, that women's suffrage is so important. Freedom for women. Thank you so much. Put your hands together for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Where is Lourdes?
Yeah, well, she doesn't work for me anymore. We have another Lourdes here in the city that works for us. Thank you so much. Thank you to the young ladies that they're leaving. Leave us know. So our next item is public comments not on the agenda, and we have a list of a couple of speakers here. So I'm not sure if they're here or virtually. Andy O'Brien,
Mayor Zaragoza, Andy is currently not available virtually or in person.
Okay, and then we have another person, Molly Cogner.
Mayor Zaragoza, Molly is currently not available virtually or in person.
Okay, do we have any other speakers virtually or in person?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no speakers virtually or in person at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And our next item is item H, report of the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any formal updates, but on the heels of the proclamation you just did, I just want to say, I know it's sometimes debated, but the first formal women's museum in the world opened in Vietnam in 1995.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So. All right, thank you. Our next item, do we have any speakers on this item?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, our next item is council members. You might have any items that you might want to announce. And also if you had any items you'd like to place in for future agendas. And council members, 3 minutes. We'll start off with Councilman Turan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick item here. The Fremont South Neighborhood Council is going to be having their neighborhood council meeting next Monday, March 11th at 6 p.m. at the at Fire Station 1, which is on South K Street. I believe it's 451 South K Street. I don't have the address in front of me, but corner of 5th and K Street. They will be having a presentation of the regular updates that you'll see at most neighborhood council meetings, but a presentation by Mr. Henry Casillas, who is a developer who is developing the housing project that will be located at the former adult ed site at 2nd and K Street. So folks who have an interest in getting an update on that project, that will be part of the presentation for that evening. I also wanted to just remind folks that we are meeting tonight on Monday because tomorrow is the primary election for the state of California. If you have not done so, please remember to vote. And it's very important that you do so because I know some folks may feel apathetic or feeling that their voice doesn't matter. Their voice absolutely matters. And in local elections, more so. So I just encourage folks, if you have not done so, please remember to submit your ballots by end of the day tomorrow. Was it 8 p.m.? Is that when our ballots close? All right, so please do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Madrigal.
Thank you very much. I had the pleasure of going to the Rose Park neighborhood meeting over the last 2 weeks. Councilmember Perello was in attendance. It was a wonderful meeting. Answered a few concerns and questions from residents. 2 weeks from today, March 18th, I will be speaking at East Village neighborhood meeting at Rio Rosales School. And as Councilmember Turan said, if you haven't done so, please go out and vote by tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Basua.
I've got no comments.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm proud to say that I've been selected as the chair of the Losan Regional Rail Authority, which is the Pacific Surfliner service from San Diego to San Luis Obispo. So I'll be serving in that capacity for a year and looking forward to a bright future and hopefully getting the tracks in the San Clemente area back open so you can go all the way from San Diego to San Luis Obispo in one trip. And since we're talking about voting, I'm very happy to say that the president and CEO of the McDonald Family Land Trust, also known as my wife Lorraine, and I have both voted and turned our ballots in early. So I would encourage everyone, if you haven't voted yet, tomorrow's the day. Do your civic duty. Please go out and vote. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Perello.
Thank you very much. Again, I parrot the rest of the council members. You have a opportunity to have a voice in your government to vote. A lot of people have sacrificed way before you or I were born to get where we are now. I hope you don't abuse that opportunity. As Councilmember Madrigal mentioned, I had the opportunity to attend the Rose Park Neighborhood Council meeting. I'll tell you what, they asked some very good questions at the neighborhood. It's a very active neighborhood, tremendous questions. issues that will be addressed and need to be addressed. And I also had the opportunity with the mayor to have a meeting with some residents that are concerned about arts. We'll see where that goes. It was a civil meeting, informative, but enough said on that. I want to express a concern that I have with respect to information. No matter what our passions are, our beliefs, whatever, facts and evidence matter. There's various information on the internet about things that have happened in the city of Oxnard that are going on, and it's always amazing to me that the people that parrot these things, and it's like ducks in a row, they parrot what one person says, and I'm like, where's the facts and evidence? And these are some of the issues that they're parroting are decades-old issues. The question that always comes to mind is, where were the people that are raising Cain? Where were they when these issues were going on? That is one of the issues that I have with social media. I'm not a big fan of it, but part of it is a lot of people can hide in their room behind a computer screen and put out stuff, and some people that don't have the opportunity or take the time to research believe it hook, line, and sinker. And it doesn't do them any good or us any good as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Valenzuela.
Yes, I just wanted to say, earlier today, I took a tour of our parks in District 6 with our Assistant Public Works Director, Steve Howlett. So looking forward to see some of the projects that will be implemented there with some grants in Southwind Park and other updates moving forward. And just like the rest of my peers, reminding folks to please turn in their ballot before 8 p.m. tomorrow. Oh, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to share that this morning I had the opportunity to participate in the Read Across America. It was really an honor for me to go over to Brecky School and read a little story to the first graders. And that was the Cat in the Hat. I'm sure that we all probably went through that. Not all of me, I'm too old for that. But anyway, I just want to share that we're in good hands. Those little kids are really, really smart. I can tell. But one of the things, I asked them, when I was leaving, he says, what's the name? And they said, Mayor Zaragoza. And the little kid says, me too. He says, thank you, Dr. Zaragoza. We walked away. But it was really, really great to actually read to the children, this morning. And as Councilman Perrella mentioned too, we also met with the folks from they want to look at the Carnegie Building and what we're going to do with that. So. And with that, as Bernie said, please vote. My understanding is really a low turnout. Vote tomorrow. That's really, really important. Even today, if you have you probably have your ballots at home and fill them out and put them in the mail, which I think is really important. So, do we have any speakers, either virtually or here on this item?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
If I can just take 30 seconds to build off, thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Voting, local elections absolutely matter, as I mentioned, and all of my colleagues mentioned. What you'd mentioned about our students, our young people, knowing about this process, and we're role modeling it as well for them to be involved and be engaged. And I will say that last school year we had hundreds of second graders come here to council chambers and to the Public Works, the big equipment outside in the parking lot last year. And in one of the groups, they were asking them, okay, well, where do you call if there's an emergency? Just quizzing them. And one of the questions was, who's the mayor of the city of Oxnard? And I had one hand go up in those second graders, and she knew the answer was Mayor Zaragoza. Yeah. And that second grader was my daughter. So just giving you a compliment on that. And yes, absolutely, folks, get out and vote, and then remember to teach your kids about that and who your local electeds are.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, our next item is item J, the review of the consent agenda items. And we have 1 to 7 items. Do we have any speakers on this item before we ask the council members if they want to pull anything?
Mayor Zaragoza, we have no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, my understanding is that Mayor Pro Tem had some questions on item 3 and 4.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I asked questions of staff about L3 and L4, and in reading the staff reports, they were fairly similar. And I've noticed that we hired 2 recruiting companies to deal with personnel issues in our IT department. And for the limited time that I've done personnel hiring and things of that nature, we always only hired one search firm for personnel recruitment. So I asked staff. And I actually got an answer that I thought was very, very good, very succinct. But I wanted staff to just reiterate that so that if other people looked at it and say, why are you hiring 2 firms? You can give them the cogent answer that explains it very, very finely. So,
Thank you.
I'll do my best. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Rob Rubin, the IT director here at Oxnard. The reason that we have 2 vendors instead of 1 gives us a couple of things. So what the vendors are able to do is, first of all, as successful IT recruiting vendors, they have a very broad network of candidates. 2 vendors give us not quite double the candidate possibilities, but a vast increase, which is certainly helpful. But what I've found that's even more helpful than that is by having 2, or more than 1, but 2 is a really good number for the size of the organization that we are here. It creates a sense of urgency with the vendors. It's not one vendor who can take their time, get to us when they have time, because they realize there's another vendor who's also competing for that business. So having 2 is really, it's more than twice as good in that respect, because we're able to get much more timely responses.
Competition.
Competition,
Thank
exactly.
you. And we're only paying each vendor for the candidates that they produce for us, correct?
That's correct. It's not the number of interviews, it's not the number of resumes, it's the hired staff.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So we need a motion. Go ahead, Councilman Perrella.
I have a question on number 6, but I would like to thank Councilmember Donald for asking that, because I wondered myself, and I do, I appreciate the information you got. A sense of urgency, urgency is a good thing in this, because the city of Oxnard is looking for people. We advertise, we're looking for people. There's opportunities in the city. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On item number 6, I did get a hold of the police chief and he responded. Unfortunately,
We have Denise here.
he is home, he's not feeling well. We have an assistant police chief with us, and thank you very much for coming. The only question that I had, the number 2 on the item, it says approve a budget appropriation in the amount of $300,000 for various equipment purchases. And I know that we'll get questions from members. I have yet to get them, but I know we will. When it says various equipment purchases, like what are we talking about? Because we've had people challenge, beg your pardon, we've had people challenge us for everything that we need to get that, oh, military grade. They're thinking we're buying tanks and armored cars and all kinds of stuff. If you could just help me out there and for the general public, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, the various equipment is actually categorized in paragraph 2 of the report, and it's listed out with the equipment that we're suggesting that is purchased with this money at this time. And that is a message board to display public safety messages outside the building being the police department. New signs in the front lobby. Those signs will replace old signs that have been there since the building opened that need to be in both English and Spanish to direct the community for services when they come in. Tactical equipment, including a robot to assist in tactical situations, binoculars, laser sights for rifles, unmanned aerial systems replacement equipment, and a portion of the annual cost of the body-worn camera program, and ballistic equipment such as shields and helmets. Any of those items that are required to come to council for approval per AB 481 will come at the time of purchase to seek approval for the funding being used specifically for that and the purchase and that equipment's use.
Thank you.
So this staff report is simply for the funds to be appropriated.
Thank you very much. Assistant Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we need a motion on this item.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilor Perrella. Please vote.
Mayor Zaragoza, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McDonald, a second by Councilmember Perrello. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you so much. Our next item is, this is a time and place to set a public hearing on item M1, Community Development Department, subject project name 2420 Oxnard Boulevard, U-Haul, project located at 2420 North Oxnard Boulevard, APN numbers 142-0-010-345 and 142-0-021-010. 1, conduct a public hearing. 2, adopt a resolution adopting the mitigated negative declaration MND 22-04 Mitigation Monitoring Reporting Program, MMRP. And 2, adopt a resolution approving and planning and zoning permit number 17-500-11, special use permit based on the findings presented in the attached conditions of approval. We start off with the city clerk certification of publication and any written communications, if any. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Zaragoza, there was a legal notice for this public hearing published in the Vida newspaper on February 22nd, 2024, and the city clerk's office has received written communications on this item, which have been provided to city council.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Do any council members have any ex parte information or other disclosures regarding this matter to place on record? Members, can you summarize ex parte information, if any? Councilman Perillo?
I have none.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I did speak with the applicant and the architect representing the applicant probably about 6 months ago. And we had some initial discussions about a presentation, and they pulled their presentation at that time. And this is a return of that presentation. But other than that, no discussion.
Councilor Arthur?
None.
None?
No.
Councilman Tehran?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, similar to Mayor Pro Tem, I did have a meeting with the applicant prior to the previous time we saw this on the agenda when it was subsequently pulled, and we have the item before us again, but I did meet with them prior to that.
I also had prior contact.
You did?
Yes.
And I also had, in a social, one of the architects spoke to me a little bit about that, but not really no super discussions. So. Thank you. Okay, so then we have our planning manager, Joe Pearson, in accordance with Measure M, posted a video presentation regarding this item, and staff is available to answer any brief clarifying questions that council may have before we take any public testimony. The council will deliberate after the public hearing has been closed. Do any council members have any questions at this time? Councilman Tehran?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Mr. Pearson. I know you and I had a pretty extensive update on this a couple weeks ago, just to take a look at where the applicant fell and where this was coming back to the council. I'll look towards additional information, but just to visit what was presented in the Measure M presentation, and again, Measure M prohibits the public from seeing this information live tonight, so I'd like to add some context to things that stuck out at me from that. Looking at this redesign, can you just summarize, is the applicant going to get some time to speak here?
Yeah, he's got 10 minutes.
They're going to get 10 minutes? Okay.
So the applicant can
So in
probably-
anticipation of them presenting to us, can you just briefly summarize what this project is and how it's coming before us tonight?
Sure, Councilmember Tehran and council members. So the request before you today is essentially a use determination request or a special use permit. The uses that are being proposed by the applicant are not traditionally permitted uses within the C2 zone. With the exception of the retail component, what they're proposing is warehouse, mini storage, as well as truck and equipment rentals. Those are what are traditionally seen as more industrial type uses. So those are allowed in our industrial zones. However, they are not allowed outright in our C2. Our code does have a provision which does allow for other uses to be allowed in the C2 zone subject to city council approval. So essentially the applicant's request is to have city council allow these uses at this location only. So this wouldn't be essentially changing the zoning. So this wouldn't allow it in other C2 zones. This would be specific to this property. And so the request went through the Planning Commission, who recommended approval at the time. And now the request is back before the City Council with some changes that happened since the last time the item was scheduled.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that summary. And that's my main question, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Is the applicant here? He has 10 minutes if he wants to come up. The applicant from U-Haul. You got 10 minutes.
And I believe they have a presentation.
You have a presentation? Okay.
Thank you, council members. Thank you, Joe. Want to especially thank Joe Pearson for the hard work that him and his staff have helped us out with over the last few months since this project was brought before.
Can you state your name, so?
I apologize. My name is Everett Schofield. I'm an architect with Lauterbach and Associates. I'm the project architect, been working with U-Haul on this project. I'd like to also recognize my colleague, Mark Pettit, was unable to be here tonight. He's been working with me on this project over the past 4 years or so. And again, we want to thank the council members and the staff for their hard work in bringing us to the project where it stands before you today. As was mentioned, we asked this item to be pulled from the agenda in April to address some of the concerns that were brought up by staff members at that time. It was very important for U-Haul to go in with the support not only of the City Council but also of the Planning Commission as well as planning staff. And so we worked diligently with them to address their concerns as best we could. And we believe that we have done so, and the project that we bring before you today addresses those concerns. We'd like to highlight some of the things that we have done in the time between Planning Commission approval and tonight. In this first image that you see, we've increased the landscape around the site to create more of a buffer between Oxnard Boulevard and the existing building. The RV storage component was completely removed at the suggestion of the Planning Commission and city staff. So that's no longer a part of this proposal. And if you could go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. So this is looking north on Oxnard Boulevard, and we've created a screen wall that mimics the architecture of the existing building to completely screen the U-Haul rental vehicles that would be stored on site, so they will no longer be visible from Oxnard Boulevard, as well as adding architectural language treatments to the facade to increase visual interest of the building itself. This is a view from Oxnard Boulevard looking at the screen wall. We've increased the landscape buffer between the property line to create a more welcoming, softer green effect. This is more of the language to really make it look like another building and not just a big wall. We heard the concerns from the Planning Commission that this was a gateway to the city, and we wanted to address those concerns, make sure that this looked as welcoming and as nice an entry to the city as we possibly could, as well as hide any kind of visual noise that might be objectionable. And my opinion, I know I'm biased, I think we were able to do that. Again, safety and security is a top priority, not only for the city of Oxnard, but for our client as well. They want to protect their investment. They want to be able to protect the things that people are storing on site. So security and visibility were top concerns in this redesign.
Hold on, but Mayor Pro Tem has a question.
I'm sorry, one real quick question, and this will help clear up a lot for me.
Yes.
A lot of the communications I got today talked about traffic signal. I'm looking at your renditions here at Oxnard Boulevard northbound, it looks to be that there's a traffic signal displayed there. Is that going to go in as part of the project to control traffic from Orchard?
This project was conditioned as part of the Planning Commission approval to install the stoplight at that.
Oh, for the mobile home park?
Yes.
Yeah, because that was one of the big concerns was people coming out of Orchard trying to get across the
Yeah.
main thoroughfare. We're hoping for a traffic light, so that takes care of my question. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you. Go ahead and continue then. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And then just to highlight some of the things, increased the landscaping as much as we possibly could while maintaining the required clearances for fire department and emergency access vehicles. This is the south end where currently the retail portion resides. We opened it up, gave it glass openings where we could to give it a business-like feel and not just an industrial feel. Again, it is a tilt-up concrete construction building, so we were somewhat limited, but efforts were made to increase the openings in the facade as much as possible. This is an aerial of the site. As you can see, the vehicle storage for U-Haul vehicles would be completely behind the screen, the proposed screen wall. In the staff's presentation, they showed you some other U-Haul locations. I think it's important to note that those are not corporate-owned U-Haul sites. Those are franchisees. This would be a corporate-controlled and corporate-owned site. And so it's important that cleanliness and making sure that this site puts a good foot forward is very important to the U-Haul Corporation. Then this goes back, these are some of the things that we had presented previously and continue to be important to the project. We feel that this site is a good fit for the community. We feel that it fills a need. The developments that are being built with Wagon Wheel, the Collection River Park, all those places, all those new residents are going to need a place to store their belongings and rent a vehicle when they move in and out. This location represents a central location close by. Sustainability is a big part of the U-Haul organization, and the reuse of this building, AIA recent case studies have found that reusing an existing building can save up to 70% of embodied carbon versus building a new building. And with all of the improvements and modernizations that will be going into this project, we stand to see a lot of sustainable improvements by updating the code, as well as being able to reuse this existing building, which as an architect is really nice to see. The U-Haul business model we feel is very important to this community, and as mentioned, becomes a part of the city infrastructure. Having a place to store your things, it becomes a need for the people, and this fills that. Many of the local storage facilities have waiting lists and are at capacity. That goes hand in hand with the housing need that the city sees as well. So this is a part of that. And we've prepared these numbers, these tax estimates come from U-Haul's accounting department, from Jackie Justice at U-Haul Tax Department. So these are their projections of what they could see based on what they've seen at other sites locally, as well as similar sized sites throughout the state. So this gives a pretty good idea of what U-Haul feels that the tax generation would be for the city of Oxnard. It's not just personal storage. While that's a big component of it, the rental, the moving supplies, trailer hitches, all those things that would be a part of this facility would go towards creating tax revenue for the city as well as revenue for the U-Haul Corporation. These are some of the sites that were used as comparisons. And again, just to reiterate, the benefits of this are the construction savings using an existing building. This unique site being backed up against the railroad creates kind of some unique opportunities where that would be a challenge developing this site for another either retail or residential use, or actually somewhat benefits for the U-Haul Corporation. The railroad tracks, which could be problematic to develop against. There's no issue with personal storage. There's not really, as we kind of went over the traffic study, found that the traffic generation is negligible for this site. We know that Oxnard Boulevard is a very busy thoroughfare, and this use would be a benefit to the city as well as without creating added stress to the city infrastructure. We know we've seen examples of storage facilities in the C2 zone next to retail and next to residential just on Oxnard Boulevard. So we have a case use that this is a compatible use and that there wouldn't be any conflicts. This U-Haul is committed to being a good corporate citizen.
I'm going to give you a couple of minutes more because the council members asked a question so you can summarize.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to summarize that U-Haul is committed to the city of Oxnard. They're committed to this site. They have gone through great lengths in addressing as many of the concerns that they've come across as possible. They've spent a great deal of capital already in improving the building. They've re-roofed it, added all the landscape, and continue to maintain this building as much as possible while they wait for this approval. And they are looking at this as a long-term investment. They want to be a part of this community and want to establish roots. And so that's why they've played the long game and taken this off after receiving the staff report to address those concerns, to go in with good faith, to show that we hear what you're saying and we'll make the changes as appropriate to address those concerns. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. And Chris Piedra, the Area District Vice President, and Ashley Hall, the Marketing Department President from U-Haul, and myself are here to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Tehran.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation and for going over that. In a moment, I'm going to ask Diego to bring up a slide, but before we get to that, I'd like to just ask real quickly about the screening you had mentioned along Oxnard Boulevard. And can you expand on that a little bit? What is the screening, what's it anticipated to look like?
Well, if you have those slides, we have.
Maybe Diego can help us out.
Oh. I asked him to bring up another slide, so he's going to have to figure. He's going to have those slides fighting each other. While he's bringing those up, though.
That's okay. Basically, we have metal panels of
there we go.
a kind of different. So this is the existing building. These are the treatments that we've proposed on the existing building. Paint as well as metal panels, a couple of different varieties. The idea is to mimic that language on the screen wall so that it looks almost identical to the building itself.
So the wall itself would match the style of the building, the changes that are going to happen to the building, to the exterior, to the aesthetics, correct?
Exactly, yes. Down to, we're proposing faux windows as well, so it's not just panels and a facade. We would have glass on there as well.
Okay, and I know Mr. Pearson and I had discussed this as well. When we look at the proposed facade walls that we'll have there, I was trying to think ahead around mitigation of graffiti or vandalism, and it sounds like with the setback and the landscaping that'll be there, as well as what looked like some kind of vine growing, that would be part of that effort. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And so now well, actually, before we bring up the slide, Diego, can you share a little bit about why the screening was there? Maybe if Mr. Pearson has any part of this, why are we having this screening? Why all this talk about a facade wall and what the purpose of that is? Like, what function does that do?
So Councilmember Tarrant, I can kind of speak to that. Essentially, Oxnard Boulevard is considered to be a scenic corridor. So as we look at the types of uses and what we want that appearance to be is we want a higher level of aesthetics in that area. So given that this use was going to involve the storage of rental equipment and trucks, wanting to be able to make sure that we are able to screen that completely from Oxnard Boulevard was the intent behind wanting to make sure that we had a screen wall that would basically prevent people from seeing that equipment and other things that will be stored in that area. So it's really kind of gets back to this being kind of a primary entry point into the city and this being a scenic corridor. So we really wanted to make sure that we're holding that aesthetic value for people as they come into the city.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pearson. That explains it. And Diego, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the slide if that's queued up. So this is from the staff presentation. It was alluded to in the current presentation. I think this is a really good example of what the screening can do. And again, as was mentioned, this is not a corporate store, it's a franchise store. But with Oxnard Boulevard being a scenic corridor, you can see that, you know, all of these ready to go for rent U-Haul equipment are there. Not quite aesthetically, you know, pleasing depending on who you are, but having something like that lined up against Oxnard Boulevard, after I saw this in the staff presentation, it kind of clicked a little bit more for me about why there was so much effort around screening and adding something that's going to be blocking the view of passersby from the equipment that would be stored there when it's not in use. So thank you, Diego, for putting that up. Now, looking at the other parts of this, two more questions. How long has U-Haul occupied this current location, which is formerly the Levitz building, correct? I think that's how it's kind of anecdotally referred to.
I believe it was purchased in 2013.
Yeah, it's been almost 9 years, 8.5 years.
Okay, so 2015. 2015 is when the U-Haul Corporation purchased the site.
Okay. And there's a current retail presence there, you said in the south end of the building, correct?
Yes. It was by rights approved because it's a retail store. There's 2,000 square feet operating as a retail store, yes.
Okay. And as is mentioned in your presentation, you know, the idea here is to utilize the current existing building for these other operations that you're going to be looking at, or the applicant's looking at. And so we'll be repurposing essentially the structure. There's not going to be new building construction, right?
No additional square footage is proposed on the exterior of the building. It would all be within the existing shell of the building.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my last part of this, I mean, I think you've already kind of spoken to it, but this is in the district I serve, and when I met with the applicant team, you know, it sounds like it was almost a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago. Our discussion on this, I felt like I made it fairly clear that this is the Oxnard Boulevard corridor. The long-term plan on that is, the mayor has mentioned too, it's a gateway that we're hoping to really use as a welcoming point for folks coming into the city, heading south on Oxnard Boulevard. It's not on this agenda item, but I invite folks to go look at the renderings for that. And I shared with the team how that really meant a lot to myself, and I know as part of the mayor's long-term goal. And, you know, essentially that's gonna be the first business that folks see as they come into the city, go under the railroad trestle and go into Oxnard on Oxnard Boulevard, with that being on the left. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into looking at this, looking at screening, looking at aesthetics. It certainly shows that you've been really wanting to be, you know, a good neighbor and a amenable applicant in this. I appreciate that. My last thing that was a big thing for me was the intersection signal that was being conditioned there at Orchard Place and Oxnard Boulevard. When I had heard from members of the public of this, you know, way back when it was originally on the agenda, there were some people who were pleased to hear that that was something that was at potential, was for there to be a signal there for folks who were coming out of the residential area to turn left, even though certainly U-Haul can benefit from that too, of people leaving with the rental equipment and needing an easy way to leave that facility without having to, dodge traffic and play Frogger to get across all those lanes. So those two big items were kind of priority to me if this were to move forward, and it sounds like, we've hit a lot of that. So I appreciate the presentation, and thank you for allowing me to ask questions, Mayor.
Thank you. And I'm going to hand, before I hand it to Mayor Pro Tem, I think it was said, that signal light is extremely important because, a lot of people have had a lot of accidents there. In fact, trying to turn left coming out of the location is extremely, actually, and it's going to help tremendously. The other thing too is that we're working on connecting the downtown with the collection and also the wagon wheel. And the wayfinding program we're working on is extremely important that people come through there and actually make it look inviting as opposed to just a rental place, which I think is really, really important to all of us. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think you have cleared up my confusion, but I think originally I may have said Citrus Grove and Oxnard Boulevard for the signal location. It's actually Orchard Place and Oxnard Boulevard, so I wanted to let people know that I actually got it right for once, and that is a condition of approval, correct, Mr. Pearson?
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Perrello?
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this project and the time that has been involved. And I'd just like to bring up a couple of points that strike me maybe a little bit different than others on the council. The original building was built in 2005, which was a Levitt's, and in 2016, it was originally built in 2005, and it was vacant when Levitt's left for 11 years. In 2016, prior to the purchase, states right in page 205 of the staff report, prior to the applicant's purchase of the property in 2016, the applicant was informed, I want to repeat, was informed that their proposal was not currently permitted uses. As such, the applicant is requesting these uses be allowed in accordance with section 16-135 of the Oxnard City Code, which states, quote, "No other uses shall be permitted in the C2 zone without the approval of the city council," end quote. Now, I do understand that when they purchased it in 2016, they waited a period of time, typically 2024. There's been some false starts and stuff, but that just works out to, just so happens, and I'm bringing it up because tomorrow's election day. Possibly they were waiting for 2 election cycles to pass so that the city wouldn't hold the applicant to the rules that are on the books, giving somebody a pass for the rules that are on the books. Now, that's my interpretation. The other thing that I hear, I was a neighborhood council chair for the South Bank neighborhood, and it used to be an area that I represented as a council member, but it's now divided into 2. Councilman Madrigal, Councilman Teran represents from H Street going to the other part of South Bank. As a neighborhood council chair of South Bank, prior to coming on the council or even considering getting on the council, there was always a concern about no crossing at that, no traffic light at that outlet, where not just the mobile home park, all the people from the apartments. And the concern always was, tremendous amount of people from the apartments are crossing the street with no pedestrian crosswalks, no nothing, to walk to the stores to buy something, and then crossing again. Now, they should go down to the intersection. They don't always do that. The other thing, since the Catholic cemetery is open at both ends of the side of the gates, people can use that as a pass-through to get to the bigger South Bank or some other part of Oxnard to avoid the traffic intersection at Oxnard Boulevard and Vineyard Avenue. But couple of the questions and I appreciate your presentation. I think that next time when we have questions asked of a person that's identified as an official for the company, they come to the microphone and they go on the record. it's difficult to get everything on the record, as there may be an appeal on this matter. When it's mentioned in the presentation that it's difficult to use the site because it's adjacent to the railroad tracks, I do appreciate that. I appreciate that tremendously. But I would like to inform you, and Lauterbach Associates should know this, having been around a long time, there are houses in West Village that back right up to the railroad tracks. There are houses in South Bank back right up to the railroad tracks. There are houses in River Park back up to the river, beg your pardon, not River Park, Wagon Wheel, back right up to the railroad tracks. 3 very big housing developments that back right up to the railroad tracks. And somehow those developers, I don't know how they approved them, but I live in one of those developments. And I know the train goes by and eventually you get used to it. They do extra soundproofing for the windows. But the opportunity to build homes in an area where the claim is that it wouldn't be acceptable to really build residential because it's too close to the railroad tracks, I just, plain English, I want to call you on that one. I don't think that's an accurate statement based on the history of the city of Oxnard. The big concern that I have with this project, it is a gateway. It is something that before the people bought the project, they were told they could not do what they want to do now. They've tried multiple times, and again, staff report, page 205. For these reasons, along with other issues related to the lack of compliance of U-Haul existing operations, at the April 13th, 2023 City Council meeting, staff recommendation was to deny the application. So they bought it knowing they were not going to be able to do what they wanted. And apparently, years later, from 2016 to 2023, they came back to the city council and it states, I didn't write this, staff wrote this, along with other issues related to the lack of compliance with the U-Haul's existing operation. I get very goosey when somebody tries to bend the rules to accommodate something for themselves. We're not planning to change a general plan for everybody in the city of Oxnard. We're planning to change a general plan for one person with enough horsepower to get what they would like potentially approved by the city council. I believe there's an opportunity for a higher use of this. Now, even before we go there, I understand private property. It's not my property, it's not the city's property, it is U-Haul's property. And it's theirs to do what they want. But they need the approval of the city council to change the rules in the city of Oxnard to accommodate one party. Now, I've been involved in the city of Oxnard for a period of time, and I've been on the council 10 years. I'm well aware of times when changes have been made to accommodate people. And I can think of a couple. River Park. There were projections of how much money the high-end 5-star hotels were going to bring. It didn't pan out. There were projections about other projects that didn't pan out. City of Oxnard approves things, has stars in their eyes, and when they have to smell the coffee and things don't pan out, we bend over and we allow things to go forward, which was not the original intent of the city of Oxnard. That being said, I find it very difficult for me to support this. You're asking for a lot of changes that are not allowed. Now, what I'd like to ask staff, if this conditional, and I'd like to ask staff this question, please.
Mr. Pearson.
If the conditional, if these approvals and the waiver of the rules are allowed, and the property is then sold, do the waivers of the rules, the change of the rules on the books in the city of Oxnard go away, or do they stay with whoever buys the property?
Yeah. So Councilman Perello, based on how land use entitlements generally work, they would run with the land itself. So it would run with any future buyer of that property. They would be able to take over this special use permit.
So potentially, if a person owned this property and they wanted the rules changed specifically from them, and then through whatever decisions are made, corporate, whatever, economy, they decide to sell it, they would be able to sell a property that did not comply with the standard rules in the city of Oxnard because they got a special dispensation tonight at this council if the council were to approve this.
Yeah, so Councilmember Pro, yes, they would essentially be subject to the same restrictions, so they would still have to follow the conditions of approval and everything that are within the entitlement, but yes, it would be transferable to any future property owners.
Mr. Pearson, do you have some examples of what other, not what this project is asking for, do you have some other examples of what projects could go into this particular site if these rules were changed?
So if we did change the rules, the uses that they're asking for would be the uses that would be allowed for any future property owner. So the request that they're making is the mini warehouse self-storage. So that would be a use that would be allowed if a future person purchased the property. The warehouse would also be allowed. The truck and equipment rentals, again, would be allowed by any future user, as well as the retail, which is just a outright permitted use there. So essentially the special request that they're making is for the mini warehouse, the warehouse, and the truck and equipment rentals. And those uses would, or other future property owners would be able to basically operate those same uses on site.
If I were somebody and the property were on the market interested in bringing this piece of property into my portfolio, and I had a string of trucks, say garbage trucks or tanker trucks, would they be allowed on this site with the way we're going to change the zoning for this site?
So Councilmember Perello, based on what the request that council would be approving tonight, if they choose to move forward with this, it would be limited to like truck and equipment rental. So it couldn't just be used as a general storage site. It would be limited to kind of the more like commercial truck and equipment rentals.
Commercial trucking equipment rental, then it could be something like Granite Construction, or it could be something like Avis Trucks or Hertz.
So yeah, if it's like a rental company, those type of things would be potentially allowed there.
Which those, or even Caterpillar, which at times they have in their portfolio little trucks and big trucks.
Yeah, so potentially any type of truck and equipment rental type use would essentially be able to take advantage of this if they purchase the property.
And that gets to one of the reasons I feel very strongly on this. There's only, as a council member who lives in the north end, I get tattooed quite a bit that I don't help the south end. And with the issue of this, if this were on the south end or the north end, whatever, quote, gateways to the city, I would have a problem with this, changing the rules to accommodate one particular applicant, even though it's his property, his money, his investment, his idea, because of what the city of Oxnard is attempting to do to make us more, I don't know the words that would be used by other councilmen, but better looking. We don't, I mean, that's my opinion. And I think I've exhausted my things, but I'm concerned about in the future, and it may not be this item, but in the future, when we have people coming before us and they want us to change the rules, and we do, we need to be aware, once those rules are changed, you don't go back and change them again. Whoever owns it gets to do with what they want to do, provided the new rules, which their next door neighbors in the same zone will not be able to take advantage of. I believe this is an unfair advantage, my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Those are my comments.
Joe, before we go to Mr. Councilman Valenzuela, if, take an extreme, let's assume that U-Haul says we want to get out of the business, and we have a developer come in that wants to build housing there. Can we do that?
So, Mayor Zaragoza, so yes, the special use permit doesn't change the underlying zoning. So the C2 zone would still remain there and intact. So any of the uses allowed under the C2 zone would still be allowed on this property. And that would include, your standard commercial retail type uses as well as residential.
So we don't have to go with additional trucking businesses and so forth. We can go with something else that potentially we can change.
Yeah, so the next property owner could choose to do a different use as long as it was consistent with the C2 zone, or they could potentially use the same section and come before council and ask
and
for
go
other
from
uses.
Thank you for that. Councilman Valenzuela.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to say thank you very much to U-Haul and the architect for, all their work on, bringing this forward back in April of last year and coming to it now. I think ultimately, as the youngest council member here, I'm trying to think of what this would look like for the next 20 or 30 years for Oxnard Boulevard. And just really picturing it as, like we're saying, it is the gateway to Oxnard. You see Wagon Wheel and the River Park and Esplanade. And I think, for me, seeing the, continuously seeing a warehouse right there kind of limits where we put economic, well, not we as a council, but where we permit economic development from private residents, private developers, to limit the rest of Oxnard for this same prosperity. And so for myself, I'm not feeling comfortable continuously seeing like a warehouse entity on this piece of property when I would like to see, ideally mixed use housing. And I understand it comes from private developers pushing for this moving forward, but I don't feel like this is an ideal location for a U-Haul project in Oxnard. Thank you.
Okay, let me, thank you, Councilman Turan. We have some speakers. You want to go ahead and speak now, and then we have our city manager wants to make some comments.
No, I'll let my colleagues speak first since I already went, and I understand that you mentioned the city manager, so I'll wait.
Councilman Valenzuela, you're okay now? Okay. City manager.
I'm going to wait till we open and close the hearing before.
Okay, so then I'm going to continue with it. Okay, we have, okay, let me go ahead and now continue with my, thank you again to the applicant, for your information. Now I'm going to open the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Members of the public are invited to sign up to speak on this item on the city's website. And the person that did not sign up can do so now by posting the agenda, and also by looking at the city's website, oxnard.org, city meetings. The speakers have 3 minutes to speak on this item, and we do have some speakers that I'd like to start off with. And we have, I think, initially we had Everett, you spoke already. And then, of course,
Mayor Zaragoza?
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza, we have 3 public speakers so far for this public hearing.
Okay, then I'm going to call them right. Pat Brown, followed by Joe Jones, and then Barbara Mackey-Ortiz. Pat Brown, 3 minutes.
Back in the 1960s and 1970s in the San Fernando Valley, they were building new apartments from the central part of the city of the San Fernando Valley to the west. They were building them right and left, just all the time. When you are young, as I was at the time, you want to work and live as close as you can to each other. Even though back then gasoline was $1 a gallon or less. We'll never see that again. But we wanted to save our money, and we found the best way to do it was to go to the U-Haul place every time we wanted to move to a brand new apartment, usually once a year or so. And we try and get as close to where we were working as possible so that we wouldn't have to be running around all the time, okay? And we knew exactly what to do because we were doing it almost every year. And we tried a couple of other places before we got to the U-Haul. And we realized that their quality of their equipment that we were going to use to put our furniture and stuff in wasn't nearly as good. They were not always successful in having everything all ready to go when we would get there. We'd make the arrangements in advance. I'd go and talk to them in advance and everything. But the U-Haul place was the only place that we could go and make sure that everything was all set up, that the timing was right, and we were there at the right time, and the truck was always ready to go, gassed up and ready to go, and we had no problems. And then we moved out here and there was no U-Haul. And from Woodland Hills all the way out here with no U-Haul? Oh my gosh. We had to hire an outfit with a big truck to load everything up in the West Valley and drive all the way out here. Well, that just was not reasonable. And I am so glad that we're getting a U-Haul place now. So it's convenient for the people who go up and get on the freeway, going in and out. It's easy to find. It's not lost in some neighborhood somewhere down the way. It's perfect spot. Everything is perfect. Just perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I live in one of the mobile homes. There's 190 of those homes. There are 450 of us who live here. I've been there since 2019. I didn't realize it was as unsafe or knowingly unsafe for as long a period of time before I was a resident. If the only way that the city can timely protect the residents of our mobile home park is to allow U-Haul to develop the vacant 11th, then I say, welcome U-Haul. It's unsafe now. There is no traffic control device now. I have a 17-year-old who's watching this on Zoom. When we're trying to learn how to drive at that unprotected left to go north, it's scary. Mm-hmm. So if that's the only way that the city can protect its residents, the highest use of local government is to protect us, please approve this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Mackey-Ortiz.
Good evening, Mayor Zaragoza and council members. Looking at I have to apologize because I haven't been involved in anything. I've been really working on other matters, but I happened to run into the agenda and I'm very, very concerned. What you're doing is putting a use that doesn't belong there and is against the rules, and I have to agree with Councilmember Perella. He's exactly right. He hit it on the head. What I see here is that it's lipstick on a pig, you know? The lipstick makes it look a little prettier, but we're still talking about a pig. It's something that doesn't belong there. Now, I have to give you some history because this site was an AHOP site. It was one that your staff and your council envisioned to comply with the general plan to put this on because we needed units, okay? And there were affordable housing developers that bid on this property, but they're low-income developers, so U-Haul beat them out. And U-Haul knew exactly what was going on. I happen to know because my son actually worked at a U-Haul, and I heard all the complaints after they tried to just do whatever they wanted to do with it. And Councilmember Perella is right on that too. You know, our whole city is turning into self-storage. Why? Because people are getting pushed out of housing, you know, and nobody's doing a service to us by putting more places where you can put your stuff when you get evicted. Okay, we need housing. This is a site that, yes, can get housing on it. You know, the affordable housing developer couldn't compete with U-Haul, and that's why we got U-Haul. But if you're going to change the rules because the guy that can afford the most, then, you know, what's the point? This really does kind of, what's the expression, chap my hide, you know, because you know, it's like we got zoning, we've got industrial zone properties out there that aren't being used that this company could go to, okay? They're not. And I think you should tell them they have to. That's the deal. And in terms of that, if this changes, I kind of don't agree with the position you've been given, because once something is like that, it's not, oh, you can just do this. because then you're being discriminatory. So if they've stepped out, then I think you've opened the door pretty wide. And I was trying to get an extra couple of minutes.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
And they told me we changed the rules. When did we change the rules?
Quite a while back, Barbara. Thank you so much.
Huh?
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
I am concerned.
Do
and
we
I would
have, thank you.
Appreciate a little consideration, because we need housing, not more storage facilities.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you have any other speakers on this item?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, so there's no other speakers. I'm closing the public hearing. And council members, we have Councilman Turan, and followed by Valenzuela, and then our city manager. Turan?
All right, thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you for all the questions from my colleagues, and then the applicant, and then the members of the public who spoke on this one. I will say that the thing that's been apparent to me, even since the early 2000s, was the vacant building that sits as it sits today, but sat vacant for as long as it did. And I seem to recall there was a high-rise housing proposed there at one point that obviously didn't come to fruition. And I know in the, I think the first time this went to the Planning Commission, there was a public speaker who had mentioned the original proposal for housing and how housing could be utilized at this particular site. As it stands now, we do have U-Haul there. And the thing that stands out to me is that this is a, in the staff report, it's a 155,000 square foot building, and U-Haul owns it right now in 2024. And if they were to decide to leave, I can't think of many other business models that operate in the way this is being proposed that would jump at using such a huge square footage. They would need to downsize it or split it up or build something else out there completely. And perhaps that would be housing in the future. But as it stands right now, they've been in there almost a decade. I think they said 8.5 years when that question was asked. And they were originally told that the place where they were situated in that zone, they couldn't do the things that they were asking to do. I will give them credit for sticking through the process, because our staff did make it not a hard no, but rather community development seems to have said yes if what you're asking, if we were to do this and this, perhaps that's something that could come to the commission and the council, and if you go through that process. And so full credit to our community development staff and to the applicant for discussing that for as long as they have on this. And that being said, when we look at the site as it exists today, if I had a picture right now or a live camera on it, it doesn't look much different than it's looked for the past 10 years. And that's not a dig on the current property owner, but again, this is the Oxnard Boulevard corridor. U-Haul owns it now. They're proposing to improve the aesthetics, to make it look a little bit nicer, to continue to operate out of there. The alternative being what? They leave it as is and continue their retail operation with the building looking as it is now. Yes, we are having a request to make changes to what is allowed there, but I can't help but think, even if they were to sell, who would buy, who would come in and do something similar there? I mean, truck rental, as Mr. Pearson had mentioned, another storage facility. There's not much else, and I can't help but think if 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, U-Haul decides to sell that property, even if it was next year, the only thing I can think of that would come in there is someone who would look at raising it and building housing there. So that being said, where it is now and what they're asking to do, and the fact that they've worked closely with staff to come up with something that is amenable, it's going to be aesthetic, it's going to improve the look of the current structure, and is going to be something that's operating out of there and doing something, I'm inclined to support this just based on all the work that's happened and understanding that there's not much else that can happen there. And the last thing I'll say is this goes back to a previous item we had on an appeal where we had a fast food restaurant that wanted to convert to a coffee shop. And folks were, uneasy about that. And I decided after hearing from the applicant team and seeing what the plan was that, well, what else could be there, especially if this fast food business may fail in the near future, then we just have a vacant building. So I look at this similarly, that if we say no, I can't imagine them closing up shop, but they would continue to operate with it as is now. And if they did close up shop, we'd have a 155,000 square foot vacant building still in a scenic corridor that is on a gateway into the city. So again, I appreciate all the work that's happened to this. I'm inclined to support it based on everything that's been proposed to us thus far and shared at this meeting and in the staff report.
Let me continue. Thank you, Councilman. I have a speaker, my understanding, a speaker that wants to speak. Councilman Valenzuela, you want to go and speak? I understand we have somebody that called in. Go ahead, Valenzuela.
Thank you. Yes, I had a quick question. Not sure if this is for Mr. Pearson or Mr. Wolf. I guess we've heard a lot about a traffic signal right there. Has there been a traffic study for implementing a traffic signal at the intersection?
But it's part of the project, isn't it,
Yeah.
Joe?
Sorry.
So, Councilmember Valenzuela, as part of the environmental document that was prepared for the U-Haul project, there was a traffic study prepared, and that traffic study is what determined that the signal was necessary for that location.
All right, and then I guess because of the study has been done so far, if we choose not to move forward with the U-Haul project, could we still include this into our capital improvement projects for future?
Yeah, so that I would have to defer to our Public Works Director.
Thank you. Tag team it.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Michael Wolf, Director of Public Works. So absent of a development project that may be conditioned to put a traffic signal in, we certainly could add that to our capital improvement project or capital improvement program. It then depends on funding from that standpoint.
All right, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify that. So, if we decide not to, if this is not approved, that there still could be a traffic signal implemented if we put it into a priority for the capital improvement projects, correct?
So I just want to add one caveat to that. So signals, typically the installation of stop control devices, which would be stop signs or signals, or have to meet one of the warrant analysis through the manual and uniform traffic control devices. So if this signal and traffic study was based upon the amount of trips generated from the new development, and it didn't, and if you subtract that out of that process and it does not meet the warrant analysis, then we would have to have a different discussion about whether our signal actually can be put there.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let me clarify something too. We closed the public hearing. We do not have any more speakers, and we do have our city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish more people liked this project. It might make it easier. I don't like this project. But the city as an institution, years and years ago, did not make that clear to the owners of the property. In fact, the city worked with them along the way, which is why I would never be able, in good conscience, to recommend not approving this. To Ms. Macker-Ortiz's point, a couple points. One is, yes, at a certain time, and I don't know for how many years, this was part of the Affordable Housing Opportunity Sites, the AHOP list. But just because the local government puts a property on that list doesn't compel the property owner to follow through with that. It's simply an opportunity where it's a potential. And just because there have been ideas about a high-rise apartment building there are ideas and intentions and aspirations all the time. In the end, what matters is what materializes. And to your other point that U-Haul beat out the affordable housing developers in the bids, that's correct. They offered the most money, and at the time, whoever owned the Levitt's property wanted the most money. So from that perspective, there's nothing the government can do about that, and there's nothing you would ever want government to be able to interfere with that. Now, the point that Councilmember Perello raised, which I heard as a very nuanced point, actually raises concern for me because none of us can truly predict the future. And what I heard, and I hope I'm correct, Councilmember Perello, was the concern that if in the event that this business closes its doors, what kinds of trucks could a future owner park on that property based on if the special use was granted? Now, with regard to the special use permit, it's what it is, right, SUP, there's a reason SUPs exist. So I don't think it's fair to characterize this as cheating or bending the rules. SUPs exist, anyone can request for it. So it's up to the staff and the body and the planning commission to determine if an SUP should be granted. But asking for an SUP in and of itself is not cheating. So I don't want to characterize it that way. But I am concerned about the point Councilmember Perello raised in terms of what would this allow, because it runs with the land, what might it allow in the future? And on that note, I want to ask our senior staff if there's any language they can offer that would tighten that box, shrink that box a little bit to give us a little bit more comfort. And I don't know what they can come up with, what I'm asking.
Joe, can you help us out?
Yes, so looking at condition 47, which currently restricts the location of where the rentals and equipment can be located, we took a quick look at kind of what the largest kind of truck size that U-Haul offers. And it appears that the largest truck they offer is approximately 12 feet in height, a little bit under 12 feet in height, and a little bit under 35 feet in length. So the idea would be to add to that condition that all trucks, trailers, or other equipment shall be limited to a maximum height of 12 feet and a maximum length of 35 feet total, and shall be completely screened from public view.
So there's a lot of trucks and equipment that won't even fit that category.
So, yeah, it would allow for essentially U-Haul's trucks and equipment, but would prevent some of the larger types of trucks or taller trucks that would need to go on site. But anything kind of within that box would potentially be allowed.
Thank you, Councilor Perello. An additional question,
Yes.
then Mayor Pro Tem.
And I appreciate the professionalism, Mr. Pearson and Mr. Ken Roselle. Really appreciate that we have these people working for us. I think I had heard you said could be construction equipment. Not all construction equipment is a truck. Would this limit it only to trucks of that size? The restrictions that the city manager is asking about, potentially being to tighten it up?
So, Councilman Perello, currently U-Haul is proposing to also offer rental-like equipment as well. So there's already an allowance for things other than trucks, so that would kind of run with that entitlement. It would just essentially make sure that all of those things fit within that box, but it could be, yeah, other types of equipment as well.
Would skip loaders, bobcats, backhoes, track layers fit in that line? They could be underneath that length and they can be underneath that height.
Yeah, they could be in that box, but would be screened behind that screen wall.
Okay, so I don't want the public to think it's only limited to trucks of that size. Am I correct or wrong? And I trust your.
So that is correct. It could be equipment that also meets those dimension requirements.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem and Teron, do you have another question? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Joe, real quick, couple quick questions. If the SUP that's given to the land, and I agree, it runs with the land, but is there any ability within our city code or state law to revoke an SUP as it relates to a particular piece of land?
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald, yes, there is the process for revocation of a special use permit if it is found that they are in violation of the conditions of approval.
And second thing is, if there's a cessation of the land, of the use of the land for a period of over 6 months, where the land sits idle, does the SUP fail or cease to exist?
So typically, because it runs with the land, it would still exist beyond that until another use essentially came in.
It seems to me that there's been land that was used for a particular function, and it's had idle and fenced for 6 months, that we could declare the SUP conditions null and void.
I would be happy to answer that. That is definitely the case for a legal non-conforming use. So if you have a use that was legal when it was initiated, but then the law changed, the zoning, the general plan changes, then after a period of time, yes, that use goes away. Typically 6 months is the standard. But as was indicated, with a conditional use permit, that does run with the land. That's why it's very important, if the council is inclined to consider this particular use, that we place a very, no pun intended, place the conditions in a box to ensure that whatever is going to be allowed there for rental is no higher than the dimensions that Mr. Pearson talked about. The idea is you don't want a 50-foot ladder truck there that you can see from a long distance. You want it to be basically that when you're driving south on Oxnard Boulevard, you cannot see any of this equipment from the roadway. So that is my understanding, is the desire, because as I mentioned, this is a scenic corridor. So it's very important to place very strict limits. And also too, I think it's important that if the council is inclined to do this, to make clear this is for rental purposes. This is not a construction storage yard. This is for rental for trucks and other like rental equipment that is no taller than 12 feet and is properly screened. So those would be the type of language that we believe, and based on the feedback we're hearing tonight, would help address some of the issues.
Okay, and that was kind of it wasn't a Reader's Digest version answer, so what I'm looking for is, do we put a condition in there that if the use granted by the council through this process ceases for a period of 6 months, that the SUP becomes null and void?
Unfortunately, if you choose to grant the special use permit, that becomes a property right. And in order to take away a property right, there has to be a full due process hearing, and there has to be substantial evidence to support the revocation of that SUP. So the mere non-use of that particular use would not give you the right to revoke the SUP, only if they were not complying with the requirements. So it is important that if you choose to approve an SUP tonight, that, as I mentioned earlier, there are very specific kind of standards that you can live with, because this is something you'll be living with for a long time.
Okay, it seems to me there was a section in our code from many, many years ago, it may have changed, that said if the use of the SUP ceases for a period of 6 months or longer, the SUP becomes null and void, but I don't know if that's correct.
Historically, a lot of cities, I've represented different cities as a contract city attorney. That language was there, but the law changed. The courts have held that a special use permit, or is normally called in other jurisdictions, a conditional use permit, is a property right, and it can't go away just based on the passage of time.
Okay, thank you.
So, but real quick, Ken, as I mentioned initially, that SUP can be changed to housing eventually, right?
Well, I mean, that is not, before the.
I understand,
council
but
tonight,
could.
But let's go a scenario that, let's say the city council chooses to approve this tonight, and in 10 years, U-Haul goes out of business. Another buyer of this property could place any use on the site that was consistent with the C2 zone.
Okay.
And there's a whole list in our code.
In the CU2 zone, right.
16135 that also gives uses that are allowed with a special use permit. And I think that, kind of bringing it back here, under Oxnard City Code Section 16135, subsection B, what's before the council tonight is no other use is permitted in the C2 zone without the approval of the city council. So that's what you're considering. Are you willing to allow this use with an SUP? So that is
Special use permit, yeah.
that is correct, which is where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Tarrant. 25 words or less.
Yeah, before I ask my question, offer to my colleagues just because I've already gone. So if anyone else wants to ask questions.
Anything else before we
Yeah.
call for a motion? Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to clarify two things. Ms. Brown, appreciate your comments, but there is a U-Haul facility on Saviors, as Councilmember Tehran was able to get his video or his pictures on the city council presentation. And I would like to address the individuals from the mobile home park. When I was the chair of the South Bank Neighborhood Council, I pushed to get a crossing there. I didn't get any traction on the council. When I got on the council, I pushed again. I didn't get any traction. Possibly your elected official, Mr. Gabe Tehran, would like to push, and I will definitely assist him, no matter if this project goes through or not, to get a traffic light and a crosswalk at that intersection. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, council member. So go ahead, Councilman Tehran.
Thank you. Just a quick thing regarding the possible modification of the condition that was mentioned by Mr. Pearson and Mr. Rozelle. If we were to create a box, so to speak, of height limit and length limit for vehicles that can be stored or rented at that location, should we also consider a gross vehicle weight rating attached to that as well, where, as Councilmember Perello had mentioned, we could certainly have a skip loader that falls in those dimensions but weighs far more than their 35-foot truck would, or whatever the length was. Is that something we could consider adding to that? That wouldn't negatively affect what the operations they're going to be doing now?
So, Councilmember Tehran, the main concern that we had with this project was really the screening and more the aesthetics. So the weight itself wasn't necessarily a consideration. We could add that as a additional item if the council would like, and we can check with the U-Haul team to see what their gross vehicle weights are for their kind of standard trucks or for their largest trucks and equipment. But the main concern that we had was the screening.
Sure, and I get the sense from Councilor Perello's line of questioning is that, what keeps them or a future tenant at that site or owner of that site from bringing in heavy equipment for rental, such as, skip loaders or bulldozers or cranes or things that fall into the dimensions we're gonna add. And that's why I'm thinking if we have a gross vehicle weight rating attached to that, those limits as well, that would limit it essentially to whatever their largest for rental truck to the general public would be. So that would be my question on that one, is adding that to that condition if we move forward.
So maybe Everett, do we have a gross vehicle weight for U-Hauls? For the trucks, Everett? Or the speaker, somebody can come up and let us know. Does U-Haul have a gross vehicle weight on their equipment?
It does, Chris Pedro for the record. It does. I can find out for you. I don't know it offhand. What I can say is that our vehicles are not DOT regulated, so it falls under whatever that threshold is. In a couple minutes, I can probably get you a number on it. I don't know it offhand.
Okay.
For staff, does that seem like something we could add to that condition if we were to have height and length limits, that we could have a weight limit as well?
As Mr. Pearson had indicated, the issue is more the scenic corridor. So the idea is that this doesn't look like it's a construction yard when you're driving south on Oxnard Boulevard. So you don't want the 50-foot crane. You don't want the other equipment like you see in other rental places along the freeway. So I think if you have, going back to my analogy of the box that is allowed certain length, certain height, that would address the...
That would take care of it.
That would address the issues in our opinion.
Council member, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Just one last comment. This is one of those sites that has been very challenging to deal with. And I remember when we had the discussion about it becoming an AHOP site, and that there's possibly a proposal to build multi-story housing up there, and a lot of the neighbors were unhappy about that. A lot of the residents gave feedback saying that they wouldn't support that, they didn't like that idea. I remember meeting with the architect and some of the representatives from U-Haul probably 6 months or so ago, And I told them at the time, I was not fond of the RV storage facility on their parking lot. I just didn't like it. There's plenty of other RV storage places around. I thought it was not pleasant to look at, not appealing, was there a way to screen it, so on and so forth. And I don't know if that's why they removed that option or not, but it's gone in this iteration. So this is a challenge to make a decision on, because so far, no matter what we've said, somebody's been upset with us about what's going to go in there or what isn't going to go in there. So I'm kind of waffling at this point. I guess I'll wait and see what the motion is that arises and go from there.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So, council members, I'd like to entertain a motion. Anybody have a motion so we can?
I'll make a motion to deny the project.
Second?
Okay, there's a motion to deny the project by Councilman Perello, second by Valenzuela. Please vote. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Zaragoza, I have a motion by Councilmember Perello to deny the project, a second by Councilmember Valenzuela. We have 2 yeas and we have 5 nays.
Thank you. So, motion?
I will motion to approve the project with all of the conditions that were in the original staff report, but also with the modified condition around a limit on length, height, and gross vehicle weight at the site.
Okay.
Point of clarification, Mayor. On the gross vehicle weight, do we have to have the gross vehicle weight in the motion before we vote on it?
Or the conditions that Ken mentioned?
Well, staff was going to ask the question about what gross vehicle weight were you proposing, because we haven't really discussed one. So we would need to make a determination in order to make that motion.
None.
Or not include it as part of your motion tonight.
So no more than what, 50,000 pounds or 40,000 pounds or what, or I don't know.
We don't,
Or
we
maybe,
don't know that
maybe
number.
there's, or,
Are we even ready for that?
When it runs on your toe, it feels like a million pounds.
go ahead, go ahead. He just
I can attest to that. It's so the 35-foot truck gross vehicle weight is 25,989.
Oh, that's,
And we would have no problem with
that's
the
a
gross
bobtail,
vehicle weight.
basically.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you repeat the weight, please?
25,999.
Thank you. So, so I'm just waiting for, all right.
So we're okay with that?
So my motion stands with the height and length limits that were mentioned earlier, which I believe is 12 feet by 35 feet, with a gross vehicle weight as stated by the applicant, 25,999.
That would work. And also to clarify, these are for rentals. So these
For
are
rentals, yes.
Rentals, right.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Just a point of clarification. I thought he said 25,999.
No, 900. 25,000.
That's what I said, isn't it?
No, you said 20.
2 digits, 3 digits, two digits, comma, 3 digits, is not what I said?
So more than 30,000 is what you're saying.
Wait a minute.
26,000, excuse me.
That's actually under
26. I'm sorry,
26,000.
26,000. That, Joe, correct?
Well, yeah, so essentially 26,000 would be the
Yeah, right.
easiest number to go with.
You want me to round up? I'll amend my motion.
Rounded to, yeah. Do we have a second? I'll second. Okay, first by Turan, second by Zaragoza. Please vote.
God is mad.
That was with thunder, lightning, what?
United SpaceX.
Madam Clerk?
Mayor Zaragoza, we have a motion by Councilmember Turan and a second by Mayor Zaragoza. We have 4 yes and 3 noes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our next item is N1. This is Public Works Department. Subject, Environmental Resource Solid Waste Rates Update Report. Recommendation, City Council receive and file the solid waste updates. And as of this date, the city council agenda is being posted. There is yet no outcome from the February 27, 2024 Public Works and Transportation Committee. Staff is available to answer any questions on this item. And we have Michael, our Public Works Director. Go ahead.
We're available for any questions. We have our Environmental Resources Division Manager, Eric Zetz, here, and we also have one of our Assistant Public Works Directors, Brian Yanis. This is a receive and file report.
Okay, any questions from the members of council?
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello?
Yes, with respect to the trash pickup, there were several questions at the Public Works Committee meeting. The state law requires a weekly pickup, clarification on that. And there was a question, resident asked me, can we, and I believe the answer to the first question addresses the second question being asked, can the resident simply opt for only one pickup per month? And I believe the first question will address that, but I'd like to put it out there for the public to hear it.
Yeah, thank you for your question. We'll bring up our Division Manager, Eric Zetz, for that.
And just a little housekeeping while he's coming up, there was a pre-recorded Measure M video on the city's YouTube channel as required. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Eric Zetz, Environmental Resources Manager. Many years ago, there was a law passed in California. It is California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Section 17331. And that law, Councilmember Perrello, requires a once every 7-day trash service for all properties, residential, commercial, industrial. So that's the 1 per 7 days. Now, when that law went into effect, shortly thereafter in 1989, 88, 89, in the 90s, early 90s, there was Assembly Bill 939. Assembly Bill 939 mandated recycling, where we had a 25% diversion by 1995 of trash. So at that point, you might have seen tubs where the public was required, and that was for residential service, to pull out materials and divert them into tubs. That Assembly Bill 939 then mandated that by the year 2000, that 25% be 50% diversion. And so that then warranted the increase in recycling at that time. From there, we went to Senate Bill 1383, which was initiated in 2016 and became law on January 1 of 2022. And that law requires organics waste mandatory diversion for all properties, with an also potential for penalty to the agency for noncompliance.
Can you share with the public the potential cost of the penalties? A lot of people like to know what things are, but when you start telling them how much money, they pay a lot more attention.
Yes, so the penalty is up to $10,000 per day per event. So if we have a property owner who fails to comply with the Senate Bill 1383, that non-compliance is the event, and then that fee is per day up to $10,000.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
The question I have, sorry, I'm not available, maybe that question was asked. You know, one of the things that I think the public needs to understand that we have not had a rate increase in the solid waste department for about 10 years. And the solid waste department is a self-supporting enterprise. And we need a lot of work at the transfer station. We need to have a lot of work done with our equipment. And to make it self-supporting, we're going to have to look at those rates. And look at those rates compared, and I'm going to share this with you. I was just coming home this morning from my service station. My service station, those people went up 10 cents overnight. Mm-hmm. Nobody says anything about it. You go to McDonald's and you buy hamburgers and the whole thing, you spend $20, $30. Nobody says anything. Here, the rates that we're asking for are minimal rates. You know, this is a self-supporting enterprise, and the enterprise is a health and safety issue because we have to collect that refuse. Whether we do it or public does it, it's going to cost some money. I just wanted to share that, just for information. I'm not
Absolutely.
sure exactly what was asked. So.
Madam Clerk, I was going to ask if there's any public speakers on this item.
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no public speakers virtually or in person for this item.
And then
Thank
I
you.
was going to go to Councilmember Turan.
Oh, okay, Councilman Turan.
Thank
My
you, Mayor.
apologies for interrupting.
No, that's perfectly fine. Thank you. That covers some of the ground I was hoping to cover as well. Just regarding, Mr. Zetz, about the self-sustaining enterprise fund, just so it's clear and we stated it, I try to state at each of these public hearings we have about this item. When we look at our enterprise funds, our solid waste, our water, wastewater, and the golf course, these funds are supported by the folks who pay into it. In this case, it's the ratepayers, correct, for solid waste?
Correct.
Okay. And if folks look at our annual comprehensive financial report from from last year and the year before and going back a couple years, they'll see that our revenues and our expenditures for solid waste have slowly become upside down, where if you look at just last year's, our expenditures exceeded our revenues for environmental resources, correct? For solid waste?
Correct.
Okay. So again, with it needing to be self-sustaining, the only way to have those meet each other is to either cut costs or cut expenditures, which, that means how much less service would you like to see, or things we won't be doing, which you just explained there are things we are mandated by the state to do, and we can't cut those, or you, you increase your revenues to meet the expenditures. So I just hope folks can understand that this isn't an effort like in the private industry where, hey, we can make a little bit more money for the shareholders. Let's see how we can improve it. We have to sustain what the services are providing, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. All right, one question I have. In the presentation, there was reference to some of the assumptions for scenario 3, one of them being replacement of vehicles at the end of life in fiscal year 24-25. Can you expand on that just a little bit on what we'd be looking at as far as vehicles being retired?
Yeah, so in the collections industry, a vehicle, generally you spec it for a 7 to 10 year renewal process. When you buy the vehicle, the numbers show that your maintenance costs go up between years 4 and 6. And so the longer you wait through that year 5 through 10, you end up increasing your maintenance costs. And those maintenance costs then drive the values down, and ultimately you can auction that vehicle earlier in its life than later in its life. And so you're balancing, and so the balancing or the cost of service study found a sweet spot of a 7-8 year renewal, and so that's what we would be following.
Okay, thank you. And that was actually a follow-up question I had was, in the city of Oxnard, typically, what do we do with vehicles when they're retired? Do we, as you mentioned, auction them off, or do we utilize parts of them for continued vehicles that are of the same era? What do we typically do in Oxnard?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We do all of that. So we will, if it's a automated side loader vehicle, it can go to auction. You can also take a vehicle that's been in those commercial front loader, automated side loader, use the chassis and convert it to a roll-off, where it can be one of your backup roll-off vehicles. So there's many things that we can do. All options are on the table. Really what we try to do is save the taxpayers dollars by making the best move that we can in the position that we're in.
All right, and that was my final question actually on that line of questioning was the idea here of replacing them on a certain cycle isn't to have our staff driving the most beautiful, top of the line, solid waste vehicles that we can get because, we got tired of the old ones. They do their service life, and then there's a point where repairing them or maintaining them exceeds the cost of purchasing a new one, I think is what you're saying, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and at that time, not only do we try and get as much as we can out of them either financially or practically by using the parts, but we are being efficient with them through that, so that way the new vehicles that come in can benefit from those previous vehicles, whether it's an offsetting cost or using the parts that we have on hand.
That is correct.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Perrello?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the back and forth questions. I'd just like to share three things. The rate that the council is proposing, the collective rate, the overall, the various choices we had, this will be the lowest rate of all the choices we have. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. And Michael, go.
So we did present a couple options. December, does that sound right? December. December 5th. So we presented, I think, 4 options. And the first couple options did not include complete operations and future expenditures. So I would not present it as the lowest option. There were 2 options that we presented that represented the entirety of our operations and things like electrification and long-term sustainability. Of those 2 options, the one that council chose in December was the lowest of the 2 options.
Thank you very much. The second point that I'd like to bring up, if residents are concerned about their trash, the one thing that they can do is, if provided they have the large can, they can get the smaller can, and there's a lower cost on that.
Correct. So we have two residential sizes, 96 and 64. I got those right. 96 and 64, and so the 64 gallon has a lower price per
pickup
service.
Thank you. And just as to piggyback on what the mayor said about, the price of gasoline, I happened to get a haircut today, and the last time I got a haircut, it was $20. Today it was $25. Same place, same barber. So things are continually going up, and the trash is one of them, and it's got to be addressed. Nobody works for free. Nobody picks up your trash for free. And one of the other items, which I hope our city manager is much more very soon comes forward, we're going to go after the people that are causing illegal dumping into the city, which is costing us money from the Environmental Resources Department.
Yeah, and I would, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, to add something to that.
That's right.
To those 2 comments about cost increases. I think the other thing that we emphasize and we want to emphasize is there are regulations that are directed from the state that don't come with funding. So even if you just looked at it from that perspective, yes, there's cost increases, fuel's going up, the cost of equipment's going up, labor costs. We have quite a bit of labor costs that are contracted out. Those are increasing. But just looking at it from 2012, last time we did a cost of service analysis that was approved by the council, a lot of the Senate bill requirements for certain types of operations have come into play, and those were not accounted for because they were not contemplated in 2012. And so even if you set aside the inflation, those state mandates and those requirements to do organics and recycling are also adding to the cost.
And I want to thank the Public Works Department, all of the speakers. Public Works explained to the public what's going on. Thank you.
And as you mentioned, there's a lot of unfunded mandates. A lot, and also the cost of fuel for our trucks is just tremendous, So I know you showed a graph in the past of how the gas or the fuel that we use has really increased tremendously, which I think is, something that.
As the Mayor Pro Tem has said multiple times, the unfunded mandates, those are the ones that, you can't do anything about it. And to his credit, he has not ever stopped saying that. And Brian, you deserve credit for that, because don't let us forget.
Thank you so much. And of course, this is a receive and file. Thank you so much. Our next item is item number 2, Housing Department, Aspire Apartments Preliminary Funding Award Letter and Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, AHSC Implementation Agreement. Recommendation City Council. Number 1, authorize the mayor to or designate to execute a preliminary funding award letter with Many Mansions, a nonprofit affordable housing provider, for gap financing in the amount of $1,200,000 for the construction of 87 affordable rental units and 1 unrestricted manager unit, commonly known as Aspire Apartments, located at 516-538 Mita Street in Oxnard, California 93030. 2, authorize the mayor or his designee to execute an implementation agreement with Manny Mansions to receive pass-through grants funding associated with Aspire Apartments Affordable Housing and Sustainable Committee Program application. Due to the release of this date for the grant fund, January 19, 2024, this item did not originate in committee. And also, we'd like to say there was a pre-recorded item per Measure M, and we, Mr. Emilio Ramirez, for any additional information. But before we continue, is any speakers on this item? Well, I think we do, right? We have Pat Brown. You have 3 minutes, Pat.
I live on the east side of Oxnard Boulevard and north of the 5 Points intersection. The entire area, almost the entire area, from there north, from the 5 Points intersection north, all the way to 6th Street on the east side of Oxnard Boulevard. We have some apartment buildings in there, and where I'm living is in the mobile home park. But we've also got some big vacant lots that used to be used car lots, and there are buildings that go along with them. And there's also some old housing in there, in that area, that's further from Oxnard Boulevard, 1 block over, that's falling apart and old and run down. And there's one building in there that I think that actually belongs to the city of Oxnard. And what we need is, we need to go from those 2 new apartment buildings up between 5th and 6th. We need to go from there south, all the way to the 5 Points intersection, leaving the good stuff and all the old rundown places and the used car lot locations, along with their buildings. And we need to have affordable housing put in there. And we need it to look nice. My suggestion is that where those used car lots were, that be high-rise apartments with businesses on the ground floor, so that people who live in downtown Oxnard can walk to do some business, at any of these locations along Oxnard Boulevard there that we're gonna have put in, and then the housing above. So you've got businesses that people can actually walk to do business with, or drive and it's really close, or for old people, they can get a cab or something to bring them over and take them back. But it'd be far more convenient for everybody, because now everybody is driving up and down Oxnard Boulevard to go somewhere else to spend their money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barbara Mackey-Ortiz, followed by Maria Navarro. I'm sorry.
That's kind of the way I feel, actually.
I need a drink of water.
Yeah. Mayor Zaragoza and council members, I just want to thank Emilio Ramirez and Albert Ramirez for offering an opportunity to my firm to be able to participate in one of the programs, I guess, that are now considered a good idea, to give tenants legal counsel. And so that's all I wanted to say. And hopefully you'll send this on, and hopefully, we'll get the grant, and it'll be the best opportunity that I've seen in my career, probably, in this sense. And you're probably wondering in terms of the amount of money. I'm taking on another apprentice, so we've definitely got to create a housing lawyer before I leave, and so my colleague Miriam Navarro is going to be my student, and
Okay.
hopefully in a few years she'll have her law license, and then I can just turn my practice over to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Maria?
If she follows in your footsteps, she's going to be fantastic. Barbara.
And taller. Our future attorney, go ahead, Mark.
Well, just slightly taller. No, thank you so much, y'all, for putting this on. Thank you, Amelia, and the Housing Department. I know that, we always, are here for as cause, but right now, I do want to talk as cause, but also as myself. I'm so happy that this is going forward, and as you know, we totally support the collaboration that you all have made with Many Mansions. Many Mansions is just such a great organization, but as well as Barbara's office, I think a lot of what we're seeing is that tenants, we have rights. They do have rights in the city. They have rights in this whole state. The problem with state policy is that sometimes they make these great laws and then there's no implementation to go with it and no enforcement. And so it really becomes like a big black hole when it comes to like really creating these protections and coming up with these systems like what the housing department is doing now with the rent stabilization program, right? It's just the creation of these systems that takes such a long time and a lot of care to create. And so, we're hopeful that this was going into a positive direction, and I'm really happy and excited for this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, any other speakers, either virtually or in person?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, any questions of Emilio? If not, we need a motion.
If there's no discussion, I'll move the recommended action.
Okay,
Second.
first by Mayor Pro Tem,
Second.
second by Oscar Madrigal. Please vote.
Mayor, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McDonald. I have a second by Councilmember Madrigal. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Our next item is Housing Department. This is a pro-housing designation. Recommendation of the City Council, 1, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for the city to participate in the state pro-housing designation program. And 2, authorize the city manager or designee to accept the designation and execute and submit all documents required as deemed necessary or appropriate to participate in the program. And due to the March 19, 2024 Affordable Housing Sustainable Committee Program Grant applications deadline on this item did not originate in committee, and we have a, per Measure M, a pre-recorded item for Mr. Emilio Ramirez. Council members, any questions of Mr. Ramirez at this
Yes,
time?
Mr. Ramirez, can you just give us a thumbnail of this? And I apologize, Mr. Ramirez, I didn't ask you the question I told you I would at rent stabilization earlier. I got involved in something else. Next time. But can you give us a thumbnail, please?
The pro-housing designation program is offered by the state of California to cities in California that have policies that encourage the development of affordable housing. That city is then designated as pro-housing, and that designation allows that city to compete better for grant funding when they pursue funding from the states for the development of affordable housing. It has other benefits for additional funding sources, public works, infrastructure, roads, things like that, that also give a competitive advantage to the city when they are a pro-housing designated city. There's also a fund, a grant fund within the state of California that pro-housing designated cities are eligible to apply for. It allows for planning efforts and a variety of different things. In this case, the pro-housing designation that we're seeking approval on today will allow many mansions to give a competitive advantage in their application to the item they just approved.
Does it make a difference in the status of the city if we're going to get credit? Do we get more credit if we're building new affordable? Or do we get a different amount of credit if we're buying existing buildings?
From that perspective, it doesn't matter. The pro housing designation is a matter of policy, and so if the city undertakes policies, i.e. streamlining, it makes it faster to approve an affordable housing development, then it's deemed pro housing, has inclusionary ordinances, things like that, that the city already does have, then the state deems them to be a pro housing city, and therefore, when they apply to a grant, they get an extra point in the application for that grant.
So if I understand correctly, and oftentimes I'm told I don't, but here's the question. It's not units produced, it's the ability and the aggressiveness on the city's part to go after and get more affordable housing.
No, sir. It is the establishment of policy that allows for the streamlining of affordable housing development. It's policies, inclusionary housing, streamlining, AHOB, things like that, that allow for the development of affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. We do have a speaker on this item, and Barbara Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor Saragosa. I was really pleased tonight. I was going over the agenda just for the item before and saw this other stuff on it, but I'm very pleased that you're asking for this. And I'll tell you why. You know, I deal with a lot of different cities on different things, and I started seeing these cities getting this label of pro-housing, you know, and some of them actually was kind of a chuckle, you know, based on the experience. But then I was wondering, well, I don't think we've done that yet, and I'm glad, because, you know, everything now, it's all about how many points you got for this or that and the other. And, you know, you can have the greatest project, but if you don't have the points, you're not going to score high enough to get it. And so this kind of just gives us a little bit more of an edge, and it's supposed to be based on, you know, that you have the type of policies that actually encourage and facilitate and allow, pretty much just facilitate affordable housing, because it is very, very difficult to do. It's getting harder to do, which is unfortunate. But so I thank the staff and Emilio for, you know, moving on this, because we need every little break that we can possibly get, and so this gives us just a little bit more. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Any other speakers, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, so Councilman Perrello?
Yes, I want to thank Ms. Barbara Ortiz for her comments. The thought does cross my mind that possibly, as Ms. Brown has mentioned, the section in the area for development, that would be that entire section for affordable housing versus the U-Haul site, but the council went a different direction.
Okay, thank you. So, we need a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion to turn the air conditioner up a little bit.
I'll move the recommended action.
Okay, moved by Councilman Perrello, second by Councilman Basua. Please vote.
Mayor Zaragoza, I have a motion by Council Member Perrello and a second by Council Member Basua.
Correct. Please vote.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's the last one. We are adjourned. Thank you. Please vote tomorrow. Please vote. Don't forget to vote. Thank you.